how's it going? My name is Tex, and this is Tex Talk. I was going to take a second to pull a little plug from a question that I'd been asked that was put up, and I felt it was appropriate to address. It's probably more of a philosophical type question, but I think part of it is understanding people, so maybe it is a psychology question and an ethics question. Before I actually get into what was on the blog, I want to tell you this idea about how people react to you. The story goes that if you're catching crabs and you have a bucket and you catch one crab and you put it in the bucket, you need to put a little lid on there because that one crab will crawl his way out of that bucket. He will find a way to grab up to the top, pull himself up, and get out. Flip side, if you have several crabs in the bucket and one of the crabs is trying to crawl out, he almost makes it to the top. Another crab will reach up from behind him and pull him back down into the bucket as he's trying to climb himself out of the bucket. And to me, the idea is people will reach for you and pull you back in. They want you to stay in that bucket with them, to stay in their misery with them, to stay in their sadness with them. And I don't necessarily think it might be because they're evil people. You have heard the, misery loves company saying. I think sometimes it's that people feel better when other people agree with them. In other words, it's a tribal thing. So this is one of the problems you have when you're doing therapy. If you're doing therapy and you're only doing it with an individual, and the individual is part of a family unit, and sometimes, people will bring me their child, say, hey, this is my child, fix him or her. Sometimes it's a case of a huge family or group or whatever saying, hey, this person's a problem. Or maybe just this person's friends when they leave the therapy room. If the person starts to get better, feel better, like if somebody has a problem with alcohol or substance, and as they start to get out of that problem, other people will feel challenged that that person's improving their life. I've had lots of people tell me, I'm getting my stuff together. And as I do that, my spouse, my boyfriend, girlfriend, my best friend, or whatever, they're mad at me. And they tell me, you're different. We don't like you. We wish you'd stay the same. Be like us. I think this pertains to what I'm going to read you from this. And I'm assuming that this person is a guy because they labeled it guy talk. And the person says, guy talk is something I struggle with at work. My coworkers will ask me questions that I find really personal and inappropriate to ask someone. For example, I heard you got a girlfriend now, man, and then they ask a lot of inappropriate sexual questions or questions about her body. And the person says, am I supposed to respond to that? Two coworkers asked me that. And then they tried solving my issue by asking me questions on why I felt uncomfortable with those questions. And they felt kids of my generation always get butthurt over things like that, exact quote, and that it's not a big deal. And in fact, they keep prodding. Then they ask if I had my parents, and I told them they were divorced. And then they responded, "Oh, well, that's the issue." Yeah, I got to handle each one of these in the whole conversation, break it up. I cannot even acknowledge these people at work anymore unless absolutely necessarily. The guy that said that comment has confronted me about personal things in my life. I've never spoken to him before, and that really threw me off, So they ask, am I just not understanding something here, or do these people I work with just suck? Those people suck. I don't know how else to put it. And this is why. Going back over the questions you ask, when you tell somebody you're uncomfortable sharing something, and then they try to tell you that you shouldn't be, that you're wrong for doing it. Here's a hint. Watch my video on gaslighting. Gaslighting sometimes is people just talking, and then they start to twist you, and then they start trying to get you to think that what you think is wrong. Conversation will quickly swerve into, well, you're the only person that gets upset about this. Everybody else thinks it's funny. Why aren't you doing this? And that's classic gaslighting. That is not them just trying to solve a problem, because one thing, there's not a problem because these people should not have been asking these questions. Oh, I used that word should. You feeling uncomfortable is the sign that something is wrong. They're telling you don't trust how you feel. When anyone tells you to ignore your feelings are wrong, that's a clue that you need to pay a little bit more attention to what's going down around you. Your feelings are something that you should pay attention to. Now, a lot of times our feelings do get kind of tweaked a little bit. They need to, we need to pay attention to them and understand why we're feeling that way. But generally, more when you feel something is wrong, when your moral compass says don't do this, then you start to listen to your moral compass and go, hey, moral compass, why are you doing this? What's wrong? What am I doing? Um, them trying to make excuses for what's wrong with you is their way of covering up what's wrong with them. See, here's the thing. This is why I say this is an ethics question. One of the conversations that happened when I was taking an ethics class, and it was about contemporary moral problems. Highly recommend that kind of class if you've never had that. And you go through and think about things. One of the things it did was open up my eyes to the fact that uh, things are happening around me that I just assumed were the right thing or were okay. And one of them was locker room talk, the mean things that people say about other people when they're not there, the gossip, and especially the guy gossip. It's not guy talk, it's guy gossip. The guys are gossiping about other people. See, so you already know right there, if it's gossip, there's an issue. Them wanting to get you to tell secrets, well, my first question, are they perverts? Do they get off? I mean, they want to listen in and hear people's secrets, and that makes them happy to get their jollies by listening to what's going on in your sex life. Because some of them will go as far as to not just ask about looks, they'll start asking details. And then they'll get upset if you flip it on them and go, excuse me, do I ask you details about sex within your relationships and all that? Now some of them will be like, oh no, I'll be glad to tell you. Red flag, red flag, red flag. So, or should I do it this way, red flag. So if you get that hint, you watch the movie. So those individuals that are doing that's a no-go. Again, they're trying to get you to buy in, and they're actually loading up ammunition to blackmail you later. Because see, this is the way that works, and I call it the Russian spy mode, is where you go in and you give somebody something small and insignificant. And then you tell them, oh, hey, remember you got this favor from me. Now you owe me one. And if you don't do this next favor for me, I'm going to tell your boss that you were doing, taking favors from a Russian spy. Now suddenly you're panicking and you're like, okay, fine. If you'll leave me alone, I'll do this extra thing for you. And then they take pictures of you doing that. And then they say, oh, now we got these pictures of you doing a bigger favor. You needed this really huge thing. And it never ends. You get pulled into that slime pit and you can't hardly crawl out. So the other thing is that's called harassment in the workplace. See, they're trying to, in their mind, justify it and say, well, we're guys. And if we're talking bad about women, whatever words you want to use these days, but basically they're turning them from people into objects. And they're doing it for their own satisfaction, and they're denigrating people. When you do that, I hate to say it, we have a lot of people in our society who feel it's okay if nobody in the group is okay. It's okay to tell racial jokes in a group if it's all the same race and you're picking on another race. They think it's okay to tell sexual jokes about whatever type of gender or sex is not there. In other words, it's another form of gossip and it's another form of denigrating people. So it is harassment. And if your company has a policy against harassment and you've told them don't, even if you hadn't told them don't, you can still go and you can write up the sexual harassment paperwork and send it up. Now, here's where the different kinds of ethics come into play. Virtue ethics versus in virtue ethics is the old ancient Greek style of virtue. If something is good, it's good because it's virtuous in itself. The act has traits. But then there's the Kantian way of looking at things, and Immanuel Kant had this idea that you do good for good's sake. And then I think it was Bentham that had the idea of the utilitarian, the idea that if you get the most good out of something. There are times, I think, when you have to jump between these. You have to sit down and decide for yourself, what outcome do you want? What outcome will you settle for? See, we're back to me. I'm being very goal oriented, saying that you're just going to do it because it's the right thing to do. If that's you, I think that's awesome. You have to ask yourself, though, is your company the kind of company who will support you? Or is your company the kind of company that will bury you? Do you need this job? Maybe you want to consider getting a different job or having one lined up. I always tell everybody, always have your resume ready to roll, because if the company doesn't support you in this, and this is their culture, you can fight it. Fighting is the right thing to do in most circumstances, but not all. Because I always tell people, I'm like, it's nice to say that you should, even if they lock you up and send you to jail, you should do this. And I'm like, well, you got kids to feed? Who's going to feed your kids? See, I don't mind paying the price myself. I don't mind getting hit with a baton. I don't mind getting locked up and put in jail. But if it means my kids are going to go hungry, you got to rethink that now. If it means that I'm going to be evicted because I didn't pay the rent, I got to think about that. So in that sense, there has to be an understanding, and there has to be an understanding too of, okay, how do you want to handle this? Because a lot of people will say, well, you should just quit and go somewhere else. And I'm like, okay, that's one way to handle it. The other one is telling these people that this ain't right. See, this is the deal. Standing up and telling people it isn't right to talk about people this way. And, they get up and go, well, you just have a problem. Yes, I do have a problem. And you're not going to do this. And explaining to them, if you keep doing this, then I will consider it sexual harassment. There's no doubt about it. We've made it perfectly clear here. Don't do this. When I said they try to drag you in, that's why they try to start small, getting you say a few things, because later on, what may happen is they may try to tell the people up the chain, oh no, we always talk about that. Last week he was telling me all about his girlfriend's butt, so I don't see what the problem is. And now it's like, well, excuse me, sir, were you doing that? Were you talking about your girlfriend's butt? Well, yes, I was, because I wanted to fit into the crowd. See, now it's the Russian spy thing all over again. It's not an easy thing to handle. It's not an easy thing to understand. Knowing that it's not right. Again, we're back to the first thing. Knowing that a trap is there, that's the first step in evading the trap. Knowing that this isn't what you want to deal with, and no, you don't want to deal with this. Telling them no, stand up and tell them no. But I would never condemn somebody for being so worried about his job that he's scared to do something. I would hope that his organization supports him. I would hope that he finds outside support if he needs it. Again, though, I have a lot of people give advice and say, yeah, you should sue them. It's easy for them to say. They're not the ones in the middle of the ethical or moral dilemma. When you're in the middle of something like that, you have to weigh it for yourself. There is no perfect answer. There's no perfect way. I can tell you, though, that those people, in my opinion, were wrong. They're wrong because it's petty what they're doing. They're denigrating, making people objects. And again, that's not right. Now, one layer down, a lot of times, especially I noticed like when you're a teenager, you've never actually been explained that this is bad behavior, that this is wrong. In fact, a lot of people probably, in the older generations grew up with this as the norm. In fact, if you wanted to get ahead in your job, you had to join in with the locker room talk or the guy gossip. And that's how people got ahead. And people thought it was okay to be that way. They thought a lot of things. And again, that's tradition. So again, we're into philosophy, and people have this idea that tradition makes it the way it should be. And no, tradition does not make it the way it ought to be. That tradition sometimes wrong, and tradition sometimes needs to change. And in this case, people will try to pull you in. Don't let the crabs pull you back in the bucket. Crawl out, be the better person. So yes, to answer your question again, they suck. Don't know how else to put it. They mainly suck, not just because they are saying things that probably aren't right. They don't respect you enough that when you say, I don't want to answer that, I'm uncomfortable with this, I don't want to talk about this, they don't let it go. See, there's the huge problem. That shows you they don't respect you. They're trying to convert you to their way of thinking. And if you don't, then they want to persecute you. And there it is. Oh, that drama triangle. They're being the persecutor. They're trying to act like your rescuer by telling you why you are the way you are and how they can help you not be the way you are and all this other stuff. But in the end, they're trying to persecute you so that you fit into their mold of the world. So don't play in that drama triangle. See, if you get in the middle of this and you play the game with them, then you are in that drama triangle. Step out of that. Be your own person. Make your decisions on how you want to handle it and roll with it. Sometimes you'll make a wrong decision, but that's the only way you narrow things down till you make the right decision. I kind of believe that a wrong decision is much better than no decision at all. Because at least with a wrong decision, you learn and you get better. So hope you have a good day. Take care. Hope you find you a better place to work, or I hope you find a better way to deal with the people, because I can tell you it's not fun to sit around and have the people that you work with try to get you to gossip and mean mouth other people just for their own amusement and pleasure. And then when you don't agree with them, in order to protect their feelings, because they're the ones that are butthurt, they're the ones that are having a problem, they try to gaslight you up so that you'll agree with them. Like I said, figuring out how you want to make decisions in life, that comes down to ethics. If you want to look that up, virtue ethics, there's Immanuel Kant, Kant, the idea of, the categorical imperative. You can look that up, see what it means. You can also, the utilitarian, what's best for what. Take a class on ethics, read books on it. It's actually interesting reading how people make the decisions they make about what they feel is right and wrong, and it helps you make better decisions in your life. All right. Y'all have a great day. Take care. And again, I appreciate your question. And I sure hope I at least gave you something to think about so that you can make the kinds of decisions that make your life and the people that you care about, their lives better. All right. Now, thank you.